Well, last night was memorable. By the time I got everything into the tent, my hands were numb, my feet were numb. I was cursing like a sailor, loudly. But strangely, it never really got that cold. It got incredibly soggy as everything condensed in the tent, but nothing inside the tent went to ice. It looks like we got, maybe 4 to 6 inches of snow, although that was piled up quite a bit higher around the tent because I kept having to shake the snow off the tent during the night. And now, I'm just heading up higher. Monticello, Utah is about 3,000 feet higher than Moab. And proportionately colder. In the forecast, the last I checked, leaving town yesterday, was for the nights coming up to drop down to about 14 Fahrenheit, which will be the coldest for this trip so far. I'm a little bit worried about tonight. Tonight will probably see me almost all the way to Monticello, and all of my sleeping bag, blankets, thermarest, clothes, everything is a little bit wet, which will mostly affect the sleeping bag. That's probably going to be about as useless as a paper tissue. Just got another visit from the Utah Highway Patrol. Turns out that last night they were getting a lot of worried calls from drivers about a guy who was pushing a shopping cart alongside the road. It's about 25 miles from where I am now to Monticello, and the Highway Patrol said that I'd better be in town by dark or they might come looking for me and force me to accept a ride, and that would be a bit of a blow, having come all this far. So I've got to step on it.
At nightfall, I reached the top of the plateau and the storm intensified. I was facing the wind, and the ice hitting my face made it difficult to keep my eyes open. By the time I hit town, I'd lost control of my heart rate and my body temperature, and everything around me was moving unnaturally fast. I found a motel room, pulled the cart in behind me, and fell asleep. An LDS bishop in a suit met me in the motel parking lot. He said his calling was to help travelers in need, and he asked if I'd like him to pay for my room out of the fasting fund he administered. I told him other people would probably need the help more. The next morning, I got an email from the friend in Montreal whose encouragement had been my main source of hope for the past 1,000 miles. Oh, and I think I need to take a bit of distance and fall out of touch for some time. I'm dealing with a large amount of uncertainty in my life at the moment, career-wise, money-wise. These are big pressures on me, which I would like to solve sooner rather than later. My friendship with you is creating another big center of uncertainty. I don't know where it's going, and there's no way of figuring that out while you're on your walk on the other side of the continent. I need my energy to go to solving the first uncertainty, so I apologize in advance for disappearing a bit. It won't be forever.
This is the corner of Highway 491 and Highway 191, leaving Monticello, Utah. If I were to go south on 191, I'd be heading toward the goosenecks on the San Juan River, Monument Valley, Arizona, and the Navajo Nation. And that's originally the direction I'd hoped to travel, but that's not in the cards. I talked with Navajo Parks and Rec, and they were not encouraging. It turns out that if I were to travel that way, I'd only be allowed to camp in designated camping areas, and those are few and far between. If I were to go through Monument Valley, the first town and the first return to an east-west road that I'd hit would be in Kayenta. From Kayenta, it's about 6 days east through the open desert to the town of Farmington at the end of the reservation. With the weather the way it is right now, and no official approval to be out there, that would be bad news waiting to happen. So instead, I'm heading this way, 491, toward Cortez in Colorado and then Durango. And we stay at a pretty high elevation, around 7,000 feet for the next couple of weeks. And the temperature's gonna keep falling, so I'm a little bit anxious. And it's not just the weather, unfortunately. It's also the tire on my cart. On the way into Monticello, somehow I managed to wear down my right tire. And I've been calling some bike places, there aren't any bike shops in Monticello, to try to figure out what the prognosis is for this, whether it's going to deteriorate really rapidly and just fall apart on me somewhere on the side of the road out in the snow, far away from a town, or if this thing is going to be good at least to Cortez, which is another 2.5 days. The nearest bike shop heading forward is in Cortez, so there's a little bit of an emphasis on getting there in one piece. I'm also not sure, now that I've got my solid polyurethane foam tires, whether I'll really be able to replace these things without just cutting them off and starting over, ordering things for mail delivery once I get to Durango. It's getting a bit complicated.
I made it to Dove Creek in Colorado around dark. Small town, open farmland, fences. I couldn't think of anywhere to put up a tent. This time, when the local bishop offered to get me a room, I took the help. I came upon a cyclist on the side of the road with a trailer and a tiny American flag. He wasn't moving much. If you imagine what a cow might look like, having died long ago in a lonely place and having subsequently been dragged through a tangle of barbed wire and run through several tubs of engine grease, that's what he looked like. I asked him if he was okay, and he said, "Yeah, I had some rain the last 3 days." I asked him where he was heading. Utah. I told him he was close, and he said, "Yeah." The mud lost me the remaining daylight. I reached my house for the night after a tense stretch of highway and a run-in with an unchained dog. Over dinner, trying desperately to project an air of basic social competence, I started to feel like I was losing my mind. In the morning, they helped me break the frozen discs of mud off my wheels with a screwdriver, a palette knife, and a hose. The wheels turned again. The tires were still attached. In the east, I could see the country I was heading for.